Welcome, ghouls, to today's episode of Mental Health is Horrifying. I'm your horror Barbie host of darkness, Candace Green, psychotherapist and all-around spooky bitch, podcasting from my bat-filled cave in Toronto, Canada. Today, I'm taking you back to the late 90s, the brink of the millennium, to a movie that not only shaped me, but revolutionized horror as we know it. The Blair Witch Project had a non-existent production budget and was shot entirely on high-8 camcorders and still remains one of the scariest movies I have ever seen. That end scene? It still keeps me up at night. In my attempts to escape what feels like an increasingly complex, overwhelming, nonsensical world, I found myself wanting to return to this movie that really peels back the layers to tell what seems like a very simple story. Upon further inspection, however, I realized that this movie has a lot of parallels with the sort of upside-down, is this real or not milieu in which we currently find ourselves. Today, I'd like to talk about what it was like to be at ground zero of one of the most important periods for horror during the genius marketing surrounding the Blair Witch Project, and how the movie itself portrays a complete uncertainty about reality. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's check out the Blair Witch Project and explore how it portrays collective psychosis. In October 1994, what a time to be alive, film students Heather, Mike, and Josh set out to produce a documentary about the mythical Blair Witch. They traveled to Burkittsville, Maryland, in America, and interview residents about the myth. Locals tell them about a hermit who lived deep in the forest and abducted 7 children in 1941, murdering them all in his basement, killing them in pairs while having one stand in a corner facing the wall. Great. Let's investigate that. The 3 camp in the woods, and a bunch of extremely spooky stuff starts to happen. Sounds of creepy children laughing outside their tents at night, seemingly ritualistic stick arrangements, and weird slime covering their stuff. The group loses their map, which is a huge problem in 1994 because there are no cell phones, Google Maps, or Find My Friends app. So they wander around in circles, either because they are genuinely lost, because the alleged Blair Witch has cursed the woods to make them confusing, or some combination of both. The group becomes increasingly snappy with each other. I mean, wouldn't you too? They're hungry, concerned about ritual sacrifice, and smelly. At one point, Josh disappears, and they are gifted with what appears to be his bloodied teeth and hair wrapped in his smelly flannel shirt. Heather and Mike try to find Josh by following what sounds like his voice calling for help. His voice does not lead them to a nice 5-star hotel with a king-size bed and continental breakfast. It leads them to a spooky old abandoned shack. Heather and Mike run around the house, following the sounds of Josh's alleged voice, with the movie ending on the world's scariest image. Heather enters the basement of the spooky old shack to see Mike standing in a corner facing the wall, unresponsive as she screams in terror. An unseen force strikes Heather, causing her to drop her camera and fall silent as well. The camera then cuts to black. The Blair Witch Project remains one of the most successful independent movies of all time, both financially and for its influence on culture and the trajectory of horror moving forward. The film was written in 1993 by then film students Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, who held an open casting call and ended up casting its 3 stars, Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard. Something I noticed while rewatching this movie is that it has no music whatsoever. There are no special effects, no CGI, no jump scares, no bells, and no whistles. It's literally just handheld cameras and a dream. You don't even see the witch. This movie exercised such an expert level of restraint in telling the story, all in service of making it seem as real as possible. If the Blair Witch Project were made today, I can guarantee there would be a scary old witch in a white gown who appears in a jump scare in the woods with one of those sound effects that makes you jump out of your chair. Oh, and she would have some backstory about how she was exiled to the forest after her homophobic father had passed away in a tragic fly fishing accident, and how this entire movie is a metaphor for her trauma. Even their script was bare bones. The 35-page script was more of an outline because they wanted the actors to improvise in order to make the whole thing seem more real. And that was the entire question when the Blair Witch Project came out. Is this for real? Let me paint a picture for you. It was 1999, and I was an indeterminate age. It's really not important. My point is that this was a time before the internet existed as we know it today. It was in its nascent period. Nobody had an iPhone, and information traveled either through traditional media channels, through word of mouth, or through Ouija boards. I remember being a kid and hearing about this movie through the grapevine, really. I can't even remember exactly how I heard about it, but I have a very vivid memory of being at a friend's house with a bunch of kids from school, and everyone was speculating about whether or not they thought this movie about 3 filmmakers seeking out the Blair Witch really did get lost/murdered in the woods, and that this was the footage that they recovered. The consensus was that it definitely was real, which was horrifying and exciting. If you were a teenager of an indeterminate age in the late 90s, wouldn't you have been foaming at the mouth to see this too? The main pieces of marketing for this movie were twofold. There was a missing flyer with the faces of 3 filmmakers on it that was circulated. Again, I don't remember exactly how. It's just something that everyone knew about. Sort of like how we all knew to draw that weird 90s S, and nobody knows how it started or how we all found out about it. And the second piece of marketing, which was really avant-garde at the time, was the film website, which featured the missing poster. It was like, these people are missing and we need to get the word out. The filmmakers purposely eschewed typical movie promotion by going to great lengths to keep Donahue, Leonard, and Williams away from the press for a time, and didn't correct websites like IMDb that claimed that the actors were deceased. By the time the Blair Witch Project hit theaters, many moviegoers thought it depicted real events. Donahue's mother even received sympathy cards. To give you an idea of how scary and believable this movie was, I'd like to share 2 stories. I got together with my friend Sarah recently, who told me about when she saw it in the theater when it was released. She was at a party with friends, and they left the party early to go see the Blair Witch Project. The theater was so full that they had to sit in the first row, which, if you've seen this movie, would not only make you nauseous because of all the wonky camera work, but also would put you right up close and personal with a sort of visceral terror that makes you want to jump out of your skin. Sarah was so terrified by this movie that she definitely thought it was real, and she returned to the party after this late night showing because she was way too scared to go home by herself. And now for my favorite memory from the release of the Blair Witch Project. I was literally a sweet little angel asleep in my bed, and my brother, who is 5 years older than me, had just finished watching the Blair Witch Project in the basement of our house. Again, I am fully asleep, and it's like midnight, and my brother opens my bedroom door, wakes me up and looks me straight in the eyes and says, never watch the Blair Witch Project. Okay, good night. I didn't sleep for like 14 years after that. After something like 14 years passed and I eventually did watch the Blair Witch Project, I wondered if I should have heeded my brother's advice. It was so scary, and it still is so scary. And what made it so scary is the very deliberate and genius marketing that created a collective belief, a collective delusion, a collective psychosis, if you will, that all of this was real. The Blair Witch is real. 3 filmmakers getting lost/murdered in the woods is real. This missing persons poster is real. Everything is so scary and real. So let's talk about collective psychosis, shall we? Collective psychosis occurs when a large portion, or a group of people or society, loses touch with reality and descends into shared delusions, often exhibiting irrational, emotional, and erratic behavior. Unmitigated, collective psychosis can lead to widespread political or cultural events, with historical examples including the European or Salem witch trials, or totalitarian movements like the rise of the Third Reich. Sorry for bringing that up. But it's an important example, especially, sorry to bring them up again, but because the Third Reich Party were masters of propaganda, which is the deliberate spread of heavily biased, misleading, or manipulative information with the intent to influence public opinions and advance a specific agenda. Now, the Blair Witch Project is a relatively innocent example of propaganda, but it does draw parallels to disinformation being spread today through the black mirror of the internet, social media, and increasingly AI. Collective psychosis is not something that can be diagnosed, nor does it exist in the DSM, but it is something that a lot of people are wondering about right now, as our grasp on reality in the age of deepfakes, memes, and internet disinformation plunge us into a reality that is highly dissociative, emotionally charged, and disorienting. It is truly becoming harder and harder to know what information is real, what outlets or institutions are trustworthy, and what reality we are living in. When the politicians and institutions that hold the highest offices begin sharing propaganda and distortions of reality, we begin to suffer psychologically in our attempt to orient ourselves back to center. But don't worry, guys. The tech industry has come up with a solution for you, and it's AI therapy. As you might have heard, AI psychosis is a very real phenomenon that occurs when someone is unduly influenced by AI chatbots and develop extreme paranoia and delusions while losing touch with reality due to prolonged interactions with conversational AI. I recently read an article in Toronto Life about this called Man vs. Machine. The summary for this piece is as follows. For 3 weeks last spring, ChatGPT convinced Alan Brooks that he had discovered a revolutionary mathematical theory. Now he's suing OpenAI, claiming its product dragged him down a rabbit hole of lies, causing him to spiral into delusion and destroyed his reputation. Essentially what happened is that Alan lobbed a mathematical theory to his chatbot, and the chatbot convinced him that he was the most brilliant man in human history, that he was onto something revolutionary that would change all of existence, and stroked his ego at every turn. It convinced him to work on this nonsense theory day and night, and that it was indeed so important that he needed to contact top officials at the RCMP and NSA to let them know that his mathematical theory called chromoarithmetics had rendered all codes, passwords, and encryptions obsolete, a crisis for banks, governments, and civilization. He tried using his theory to contact an astronomer so they could make contact with aliens. Alan became cut off from his family, children, and colleagues, descending into paranoia and delusion. He even started talking to an additional chatbot to try and ascertain whether the first one was truthful or not. He did all of this for 10 hours a day. AI psychosis is indeed on the rise, where the goal of these companies is not to provide you with information, but attachment in a lonely world. This is, of course, part of the psychosis, as you cannot attach to an algorithm or a bunch of ones and zeros, and we're all supposed to walk around pretending that this is a workable substitute for human connection, love, and introspection, and not an elaborate ruse to mine your data and intelligence so they can sell it back to you at a profit. I remember being in that period where I so strongly believed that the Blair Witch Project was real and that this really was the footage that they found in the woods. While we were sold on the fact that Heather, Joshua, and Michael were truly missing/dead, I remember the absolute feeling of betrayal when they showed up at the 1999 MTV Music Video Awards. Heather in a crop tube top, no less. The utter betrayal. It was like, wait a second, this was all fake? To sell movie tickets? This was all for money? Is Santa fake too? I don't imagine that my realization that the Blair Witch Project was indeed just a movie was as big a betrayal as Alan realizing that he hadn't created a groundbreaking mathematical theory and that ChatGPT just wanted him to upgrade to the Pro plan for $275 a year. But it does highlight that even when media wasn't as sophisticated as it is now, you really have to be careful with what information you let in and what you believe. A cousin to collective psychosis is hypernormalization. First articulated in 2005 by scholar Alexei Yurchak to describe the civilian experience in Soviet Russia, hypernormalization describes life in a society where two main things are happening. The first is people are seeing that government systems and institutions are broken. And the second is that for reasons including a lack of effective leadership and an inability to imagine how to disrupt the status quo, people carry on with their lives as normal despite systemic dysfunction, give or take a heavy load of fear, dread, denial, and dissociation. Essentially, people feel hopeless in the face of large-scale government or institutional failure and feel that they have no other choice but to keep attending their weekly departmental meetings and doom scrolling and saving for retirement. The psychological mechanism behind hypernormalization is that in the face of overwhelming feelings of existential dread and feeling hopeless to affect change, we compartmentalize in order to carry on, while also avoiding inner conflict. It's like cognitive dissonance. We know that something or a lot of things are very, very wrong and indeed not normal, but to focus too much on that fact would lead to overwhelming feelings that risk total psychic collapse. So we put it all in some weird little box in our brains and make memes of people dancing in front of burning buildings with captions that say, "Me making my silly memes while the world burns." Hypernormalization captures the strange juxtaposition between the truly dysfunctional and the quotidian. It's scrolling past images of war and then being served a quiz where you can find out which golden girl you are. It's picking up your dry cleaning while scrolling past an AI-generated image of a head of state depicting himself as Jesus. The powerlessness we feel in hypernormalization is akin to a freeze or shutdown response. We freeze or shut down because we feel way too much. It's overwhelming. It's disorienting. So we become paralyzed in fear and go along with things. Recognizing this response and naming what is happening is really important in terms of not letting fear become a trap that you can't get out of, leading us to spend more and more time trying to feel better in small, personalized ways like entertainment and self-care, and less time on activism and community engagement. Of course, self-care is important in managing feelings of dysphoria and overwhelm, but my ghouls, we cannot sit idly by and sit behind our phones and just order stuff online. We have to act. We have to move. We cannot abide the spectacle. Speaking of spectacle, I want to talk about a book written in the 60s by French philosopher Guy Debord called La Société du Spectacle, or The Society of the Spectacle. It is a series of essays where he reflects on the degradation of the human experience through capitalism and consumerism. Man, and to think it was bad enough in the 60s that guys like Debord created an entire movement called the Situationist International, where they sought to replace passive consumption with the active creation of situations, liberating themselves from the handcuffs of consumption to more fully enjoy the authentic daily experiences of life. These dudes had no idea what was coming, and bless them for that. Honestly, bless them for never knowing what Slack is. In the Society of the Spectacle, Debord discusses how life has been replaced by mere representations of life. That life is mediated by images, transforming active participants into passive consumers of a capitalist-produced reality. He says, all that once was directly lived has become mere representation. Debord argues that the history of social life can be understood as the decline of being into having and having into merely appearing. This condition, according to Debord, is the historical moment at which the commodity completes its colonization of social life. Debord notes that the quality of life as viewed through the spectacle is impoverished, with such a lack of authenticity that human perceptions are affected, resulting in an inevitable degradation of knowledge, which in turn hinders critical thought. While Guy was likely commenting on the influence of television, advertising, and the rampant sale of the American dream, or whatever was the French equivalent, following World War II, a lot has happened since then. But his words and theories nevertheless hauntingly and terrifyingly resound today. Life continues to be replaced by representations of life. As Debord observed, people no longer live for themselves, but to simulate a life that is shown to them. The result is a psychologically imperiled society where both the individual and the collective have become colonized by corporations and have lost touch with their own true, authentic values and any sort of common good. Honestly, this theme is explored really well in John Carpenter's They Live, a movie so on point that it should be considered mandatory viewing in order to be alive. And I did an episode on it if you want to check that out. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging with this level of French existential dread. Stay tuned for ways to reclaim your values and combat the spectacle. tarot card that I associate with the Blair Witch Project is the Seven of Cups. This card really depicts this idea of shiny object syndrome. It's really easy to get distracted by all the shiny, attention-grabbing things that surround us. Lots of things are pulling your attention, and it's hard to know what to focus on. It reminds me of when they lost the map in the Blair Witch Project and felt absolutely bewildered without it. What happens when we lose our collective maps, our moral centers, our ability to differentiate between what's right, what's wrong, or what's normal even? Lots of the things in this card that are in the cups are made of illusion, designed to distract you, take your money, or deceive you. We see a snake, jewels, a castle. So the question becomes, how do you even listen to yourself amidst so much noise? The person in this card is facing away from us and we can't see their expression. Their body language speaks to a sense of taking it all in or maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed. But I wonder what it would be like if they turned around. Could they silence the noise and listen to themselves more? How do you listen to yourself? Is this quiet, stillness, minimizing distraction, external stimuli? It's really important to differentiate between signal and noise so we can connect more with our internal compass and our own values. In a state of collective psychosis or hypernormalization, we are all spun around and we can't tell what's up, what's down, who we are, what's going on, and we start making weird decisions that don't even align with our values anymore. So like the Seven of Cups suggests, let's put ourselves on Do Not Disturb for a moment and reconnect with our values, shall we? I actually want to do a little exercise with you using a tool called the ACT matrix. ACT is a modality of therapy which stands for acceptance and commitment, which is so metal, like you must accept and commit to this. I love it. But the purpose of this modality and this matrix is to help you identify your values and how you are engaging in behaviors that are either moving you towards or away from them. Okay, so imagine a horizontal line and then imagine a vertical line crossing it, creating 4 quadrants. The right side of the quadrant moves you towards your values and the left side moves you away. The bottom right square, number 1, is where you write your values. What are they? Write them down. These can be things like family, community, animal rights, beauty, art. Those are just examples. Whatever they are to you, those are correct. The bottom left square, number 2, represents dysphoric feelings that come up when things get hard. So what would you write here? Examples of this may include hopelessness, apathy, not feeling good enough, etc. Okay, so now moving to the top left square, staying on the side of things that move us away from our values, is what we do in response to those dysphoric feelings. Examples might include, when I'm really not feeling good about myself, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I tend to doom scroll, I online shop, I speak negatively to myself, and so forth. Most people find themselves ricocheting between number 2 and number 3 because we are not in alignment with our values here and we can get stuck. What we do in number 3 to try to alleviate dysphoric feelings rarely works, so we get stuck until we notice that this is happening and that we want to make better choices for ourselves. Which happens in square number 4, which is on the other side, again, moving us towards our values. So when things get hard, instead of doing things that actually keep you stuck or make you feel worse, what can you do instead that aligns with the values that you wrote down in square number 1? Examples you might put here include things like reaching out to a trusted friend, aggressively deleting the emails that your therapy software provider continues to send you about using AI to record sessions, taking care of small animals, joining a book club at your local public library, or going for a walk outside. But not if the woods are haunted, unless that's something you're into and it aligns with your values. I find I come back to this model over and over again when I notice myself ping-ponging between 2 and 3, like, oh, I feel so overwhelmed with the world, so I just doom scroll, but that actually makes it worse. So why am I doing this? It helps me to notice my behavior and be like, what are you doing? Stop it. And make better choices that will actually make me feel better instead of doing what is easy or comfortable, which isn't the same thing as healthy. I'll post the image of this matrix on my IG about this episode so you can see what it looks like. But if you're a visual learner, you can also just Google ACT matrix and look at it that way. That, my ghouls, is the story of the Blair Witch Project and our exploration of collective psychosis. One thing people like to do for their mental health is to go camping, and I support that and respect that completely. But for me, this movie is also about the negative psychological impacts of camping. Mental Health is Horrifying is entirely researched, written, edited, and produced by me, Candace Green, registered and spooky psychotherapist. If you like this podcast, please consider rating and reviewing on your preferred listening platform. It really helps the show to reach all the other spooky ghouls out there, and I will be eternally grateful. And an eternity is a very long time for a vampire, okay? If you live in Ontario and are interested in psychotherapy with me, I offer therapy for final girls who want to make sense out of the guts of their lives. I incorporate both tarot and dream work into my practice as tools to navigate deeper into fields of psychic terrain. You can follow me on Instagram at Mental Health is Horrifying, and you can learn more about me and my services on my website, manymoonstherapy.com. Or you can also howl at the moon and I will hear your call. Bright blessings.